Like, friendship breakups will have your chest hurting like you're going through a whole romantic breakup. Hello everyone, and welcome to or back to Tahari Talks, your therapy session in addition to the therapy, where we get your mental and your spiritual right all at the very same time. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let's get right into it. We're not about to waste no time. Go ahead and join the gang. I upload videos every single week talking about different topics to help you get your life or find that you're not alone in your walk in life. This is officially episode 10 of Tahari Talks. Tahari Talks has reached the double digits. It's no longer a little baby. We are growing, we are maturing, and I love that for us. And in this episode, we will be talking about friendship breakups, how to avoid them if you can, and how to get over them and to deal with them when you can't. If you've been here for a while and you're not new to Tahari Talks, then you know we also like to cover the natural as well as the spiritual, so let's not delay, let's get right into it. Y'all know that I love getting into your business by spilling my own, so trust that I'm speaking from experience when I talk about this topic especially. I've experienced the ending of professional relationships, associate relationships, as well as friendships that I held close to my heart. And recently I was on the brink of what I thought was about to be a friendship breakup with my best friend of over 20 years. So when I speak to everything that I'm about to get into, know that it's from firsthand experience, and hopefully by me telling my story you can kind of pull from the experiences that I'm sharing. I also want to preface this episode by saying, although I am an open book, I do realize that me getting on a public platform and choosing to share details of my life does not mean that the people that are in my life chose to do the same thing. So if there's ever a point in the story where I don't go into every single detail, that's because I'm protecting the privacy of the other people involved. It's one thing for me to tell a story where I was the only character in it. If I'm the only character in the story, I'm going to give every single detail. But when there are other people involved that did not choose to sit down with a mic and tell their part of the story, I have to protect that. And that's people past and present. So if some pieces seem vague, that's the only reason why. But what I can promise to do is share as much to the conversation that's productive to the conversation at hand that can help you in navigating your own friendship endings or transitions in your life. I feel like, yes, associate relationships are hard. When they have to end, especially abruptly, that can be tough, but they come nowhere close to the ending or the transition or the stretching of a actual friendship that you hold near and dear to your heart. So that's where we're going to keep our focus on for the sake of this episode. So I'll start with the friendship that actually ended. Me and this person became friends at a time where we both had a lot of freedom in our lives. We had minimal responsibility. We were both students. We were both single, as in not married. We were both childless. So we had nothing but time, space, and opportunity to get to know each other, to hang out with one another, to do the things that we wanted to do. And while that's a great time in life, as you continue to mature and grow, the restrictions of life tasks and life roles that pull on you put a strain on your friendships as well. And so 4 years into our friendship, I get married one fall. I'm pregnant and having a baby by the next fall. And so I'm going through all these life changes, and it's not to say that this person wasn't going through life changes as well, but a lot changed for me rapidly. And it got to a point where suddenly I'm not able to drop everything and respond to text right away. I'm not able to drop everything and hang out immediately. And in doing so, she felt like I was neglecting our friendship. I'll get into the conversation that we were able to have down the line, but the main concern was, I text you, don't respond until the next day. I hit you to try and hang out last minute and it's not happening. And looking back, 100% that was valid. I was not able to respond because, and this isn't to give excuses, this is to give context, because I have a small child that I'm trying to tend to, or I can't drop everything and hang out within 24 hours notice as I used to be able to. It was a lack of understanding for the roles and the ways that we were transitioning differently, and there wasn't a natural ebb and flow of how our friendship looks differently. Our relationship was not able to sustain or to withstand what that transition looked like ultimately. But here I was on the other side of it. I was so caught up in my new worlds and in my new roles that in my mind, I thought that everything was good. I'm thinking, all right, we may go some more weeks than usual without speaking. We may go more time than usual without speaking. But when we pick up, it's going to be like we never missed a beat. We're going to go on. We're going to continue and everything is good. Fast forward, we sit down, we have a conversation. She's like, this is how I've been feeling this whole time. And this is why it's good to converse. We'll talk more about that. But she's like, this is how I've been feeling. And it was unbeknownst to me. And my thing the whole time was, I'm such a just say that person, let's just talk about it person without time going on and tension building. But I do understand that not everybody handles conflict and handles difficulties the same way. And so we have a conversation, we share our perspective, and we decide that the friendship is going to pick up where it left off. For the next year or so, she's preparing to get married, and I'm very intentional about being responsive, about showing up, about reaching out first, about being responsive when reached out to, just making sure that I'm very present and showing her that my love for you and this expression is going to be me showing up in these ways. I understood that while somebody is planning a wedding, they're very busy. They don't have the time to constantly be the person who's reaching out. So I get that. And I took that load on, because in this season where it was me who was going through the transitions, you felt like it had to be you. So let me pick up that slack, especially because you expressed this to me. And I want to show that I'm putting forth effort in the areas where you feel like I lacked. Wedding comes, wedding goes, and then we fall into this pit where things are starting to settle. She's settling into her new role. I'm into mine. By this time, obviously, I have a rhythm, and I felt the same thing happening. Minimal reaching out, long responses and delays. And I'm big on what people bring into our relationship. If you make it a thing, now it's a thing. If you make the rule that, okay, communication is key for me, then I expect you to communicate. If you make the rule that you showing up is key for me, then I expect you to show up for me as well. And so when I'm recognizing that the very same actions that you said that I wasn't doing, you're not doing either, now we need to have another conversation. And one thing about me, when I value the friendship and when I value the connection, I'm always open to having a conversation, because that's how perspective is shared. We'll talk more about that in the solutions and how to deal. So we come to the table, we have another conversation, and she's like, you know what, you're 100% right. I understand, I get it. But then time moved on and things just were not changing. I can take full accountability looking back and saying that it was on both of our behalf. Like, I'm seeing that this is just what it is, and I'm also a person where I'm not going to force things. To that same token, I was continuing to matriculate in the endeavors where I was trying to grow in my career, and I didn't feel supported in that. I'm sure she had seasons and moments where she didn't feel supported. And so it got to a point where if we need to keep coming back and having the same conversation about the same issue and it's still not being fixed, then chances are the relationship has just come to a dead end, and it's nothing that we can do to breathe life back into it. And I feel like it got to a point where it just was no further conversation that needed to be had. I feel like if you're a discerning person, you can tell when there's something that needs to be said, and you can also tell when all that there was to be said has already been said and there's nothing more to talk about. And in my opinion, it got to that point where we just understood that the friendship had reached the end of the road, and that was all there was to it. Now, for the most recent experience that I had with what I thought was about to be a friendship breakup, this was with my best friend. And when I say my best friend, I mean like my soulmate of a friend. I mean the first person that I met when I moved to a new state as a little kid, and has like seen me grow, highs, lows, ups, downs, ins, outs, like been my most vulnerable with, knows where the bodies are very tight, like my girl. And granted, when you go through life with somebody, you're gonna have spats with them, because that comes with relationship. If you're not having disagreements and conflict and resolution at the end of the conflict, then the relationship lacks depth. So granted, we've had spats in the past where we needed to come to the table, have a conversation, but it would be like, all right, 24 hours, we're over it, we're conversing, we're on to the next. 48 hours, all right, cool, we're over it, we're on to the next. But this was different. Life was happening to all of us, as it always does, and she was going through a lot behind the scenes that was later revealed that I was unaware of. And granted, that weighs on you. So in the midst, she got distant, she got quiet, and me, as well as our other best friend, we were just pulling on her in ways that were like, are you okay? Are we okay? Are you okay? Are we okay? And when somebody's in a dark place and you're constantly, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? But you're not coming and getting them. You just on the shore like, hello, you all right? They don't really too much want to hear that. And so I continue to press the issue. Are we okay? What is going, because wanting my friend to communicate, that being our only method to be able to form connection, because we're not in the same city anymore. We're not living in the same house. We don't, like, that's our only method to sustain this connection. I'm like, are we okay? Are we okay? And her response was very raw, very real in audio form. Like, I'm dealing with so much over here that I don't even have time to think about that. And the way in which it was expressed, it was so abrasive that to me, it gave, I don't want to deal with you anymore. I'm done with this friendship. I'm good on it altogether. And another thing about me, I take people's words at face value. So if you say I don't want to deal, I'm not going to be like, oh, you sure you don't want to deal? You're just saying that. What you really mean is, because although I know human nature is to say certain things even though you need others, the human in me is like, I'm going to give you exactly what you need. need. And if you don't say it, then I don't know that you need it. And I move on to the next. So that's how I handled it. And again, this is why receiving perspective and conversation is so important, because you can be seeing a situation, a problem, an interaction, a conflict from your worldview, your perspective, your mindset. And the person on the other end of the line, on the other end of the conflict, sees it completely differently based on their worldview or what they're dealing with or what they're feeling. And their take is completely different. If this sounds very elementary, it's because I cannot divulge every detail. But I felt triggered from the other friendship that ended because I felt like rules were being applied that she wasn't living up to. You're introducing these standards that we have to uphold, but you're not upholding them yourself. You demand respect, but you're not giving it whenever it's your time to express your frustrations. And I also felt like in expressing her frustration with us and with what she was dealing with, there was a lack of emotional control. And I'm at a place in my life where I'm so big on emotional control with myself first, with my husband, with my friendships, with my family members, in expressing to them that I cannot and will not be anybody's emotional punching bag. Yes, I will be a space for you to be able to vent. Yes, I will be a space for you to be able to express. Will I be on the receiving end of your frustrations when your frustrations have nothing to do with me? Absolutely not. I do believe that there is a way to hold space for others without holding space for them to dump on you and crush you with the weight of what they're dealing with. I also strongly believe in reciprocity. Everybody goes through hard things. Everybody goes through life. Me going through internal warfare and internal fights does not mean that I could come out with my punching gloves on and punch everybody that's around because they just happen to be close to me. And so while I'm 100% aware that you can't expect you out of everybody in your life, I do believe that you can demand respect in the relationships that you deal with. Yes, everybody's going to have dark days. Yes, everybody's going to have times where they're not their best self. Yes, everybody's going to have times where they say things that they don't necessarily mean. But when it becomes a repetitive behavior, I do believe that you're justified to say, hey, you will speak to me with a certain level of respect. If you need a chance to go to the corner and cool off and then come back to the table, cool. But there needs to be a baseline of respect. That's the biggest thing. So after she states her piece, I'm like, all right, you let me know where you're at. Thank you for letting me know how to direct my prayers for you. If you need me, I'll be over here. I love you. I'll talk to you later. And that was it for over a month. And this is somebody that I'm used to speaking to every day. So that month felt like half a year type. Time goes on. She reaches out, and it was close to my birthday, and I was very intentional about my birthday this year and making sure that I spent it in solitude, that I prioritized my peace, and that I did not let anything that wasn't aligned with my peace interfere with it. And so my response back was, yes, I'm open to conversation, but it has to be after I get through this period, because I'm being very intentional about this time. Especially because as somebody that holds space for people all of the time, that was a boundary that I had to assert for myself, especially surrounding how I wanted to bring in this next year of life. Time goes on, and when I get to the spiritual piece, I'm gonna talk about the signs and pushes that I was getting that I knew that I needed to reach back out to have the conversation. But we were blessed enough to be able to rebuild. A lot of people don't get second chances. A lot of friendships don't get understanding and intimacy and vulnerability to the point where they're able to say, hey, this is how this affected me, and for the other party to be able to do the same. And then you actually sustain a friendship, a sisterhood, a bond beyond that moment, beyond that tough patch. But we're here. I'm talking to y'all about it, and we still all right. I'm gonna see her today, matter of fact. Like, it's all good. And I feel forever blessed that I have a relationship, a friendship, a sisterhood in my life that I know, like, I don't always have to show up as my best self. She doesn't always have to show up as her best self, but we can see it through to the other side. And I won't sit here and say that it's not a work in progress. I won't sit here and say that there are very uncomfortable moments in that rebuilding process, but the simple fact that we are able to rebuild is the part that I value the most. And it's worth it when you see that bond as something that's valuable. So with that being said, let's talk about how friendship breakups affect you in the natural. Because baby, the way my chest was hurting after that initial conversation, sorry I'm nasally, y'all, I'm just getting over a cold, and oof. But the way my chest was hurting, like, friendship breakups will have your chest hurting like you're going through a whole romantic breakup, like you're grieving, like you just experienced death for real. Like, physically my chest was hurting. That sounds dramatic, but if you've been through it, then you know exactly what I'm saying. And I think part of the biggest part of the hurt for me was that I felt blindsided by it. Like, I didn't do something that I know betrayed my friend, or there wasn't a big blow up, or there wasn't any big action that I could pinpoint, okay, we're experiencing the fallout because this happened. It was out of nowhere, in my opinion. And so I'm like, I think that was part of it. I don't have an equation to sum this up and make it make sense. I don't have anything to draw from. Okay, this result is happening because this occurrence happened. It's a random day, bro. I'm thinking we having a conversation. You just like, nah, I'm cool on you. Okay. I had to sit with myself and validate the emotions that I was feeling. Yes, this was unexpected. No, this doesn't make sense, but you have to trust that eventually it will make sense, and you have to care for yourself in your own solitude and in your own corner in the meantime until you're able to gain more context, if it's even meant for you to get that. Because a lot of times we don't get answers, we don't get solutions, we don't get restoration, and we have to take care of ourselves and our wounds and tend to our wounds in a way that we're able to bounce back from. On a spiritual level, you have to ask yourself, what is this friendship breakup? What is this friendship conflict? What is this distracting me from? Why is this randomly coming up? Because for me, it came up at a point where I'm trying to work through things within my family. My marriage is in a good place. I'm trying to build this new platform. I'm trying to follow this new path. I'm really focused right now. I'm really trying to work through some things, but naturally something is always going to come to distract you in the midst of you trying to do right and build and pursue, because that's simply how life works. And then also taking the time to ask God, what are you putting me through this to show me or to teach me? Is it to show me something about myself? Is it to show me something about the people that I attract into my life? Are you showing me that this person is no longer meant to go through life with me? And I'm not even speaking just about my best friend. I'm speaking about any relationship that you may be trying to evaluate. Asking yourselves the questions to make sure that you're managing the storm well. What are you taking me through this to show me? Because I need to learn it right the first time, because I'm not trying to keep coming back to this. I don't want to keep experiencing this. It hurts too bad, and I don't want this pain to be for no reason. So what is it that you want me to see? Make it clear, make it plain, and open my eyes and my heart to receive what I need to learn about myself, about other people, or about you. Another question that I really had to ask God during this process is, are you taking this relationship through this process because you're severing it, or because you're stretching it to new capacities? Do you want us to go deeper? Do you want us to get closer through this? Or are you simply saying that this relationship no longer holds any value or any substance and is done for? And I also really had to shift my prayers and my heart posture to ask God to give me signs, because I did not want to move out of my flesh, because my flesh was saying, nah, I'm cool on it, even though I know I miss my friend. My flesh was saying, nah, nobody talks to me or treats me like this, so I'm good on the situation altogether. My flesh was saying, move how you used to move before you were mature and before you realized that conversation and perspective are valuable, and communication will see you through, and just cut people off and be done with it and walk away. But I knew that that would be me moving out of my flesh, and I did not want to move. So I had to ask God to lead my spirit in handling this situation. And he did just that. Like, when I explained to y'all the way that things unfolded, you like, okay. Now what I can say is there was a period where I knew that my assignment was to do nothing but wait. A lot of times you got to give God in time a chance to do what they're going to do. Like, me and my best friend both said the same thing. God and time are going to do what they do, and they absolutely will. But sometimes you just have to sit back. Sometimes you got to give yourself a chance to see the signs. You got to give yourself a chance to hear from God. You got to give yourself a chance to grow and heal and process and reflect. And you can't do that if you're constantly in action mode of, should I reach out today, or what? Sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing and just wait and see what happens. And so there was a waiting period where I had to see, okay, let me just take a break from this situation altogether, and when I get direction, I will move based on that direction. But if I don't hear clearly from God, then I won't. Then I'm not going to do anything. So time continues to go on. My birthday comes, it goes, and I knew that the ball was in my court. I didn't want to keep stretching this out. I needed to reach out. Again, I prayed, God, if it's meant for me to reach out, then make it clear. And the day before I finally did reach back out for us to have a conversation, my daughter has been on this kick lately where she's like, let's read a book before bedtime. She brings me a book. And in the book, the main character's name started with the same letter that my best friend's name starts with. I'm like, huh, God, you're really funny. Furthermore, the character moves to a new city and meets her new best friend in the same exact way that me and my best friend met, which is, we were 10. So I'm like, you want to do double dutch? You want to jump? And that was like how we started talking. And literally in the book, that's how it happened. So I'm like, all right, God, you're clearly telling me that I need to reach out. And I don't think I've mentioned this on Tahari Talks, but God speaks to me through my dreams. He gives me prophecies. He gives me clear signs, warnings, messages, insight, the blueprint. Like, he speaks to me vividly in my dreams. I go to sleep that night. In my dream, she's texting me. She's like, hey girl, I'm gonna say it so you don't have to. So I'm like, all right, God, please get off my neck. I hear you. So the next day I reach out and I'm like, I don't think that audio conversation through text or a text-based conversation is going to do us any justice, especially after all this time. We need to go face to face, come to the table, sit down and talk. And we did just that, because one thing I've learned is to not play with God and his signs. Like, I want no smoke. And even at that point, I had no inclination as to what was going to happen from there. I'm like, we may come to the table and have this conversation and there's still no friendship, but I knew that I needed to go and at least hear her and express my piece and be obedient to coming to the table and having a talk. And sometimes there will be times where God is like, you don't need to say anything that's already been said, as with the first situation, has already been said. But there are other times where he's like, no, you need to go and have a conversation. If you're spirit led, you will know which of the two you're meant to do. Because also, on a spiritual tip, if this is a friendship and a bond that bears fruit, y'all pray for each other, y'all pray together, y'all break curses together, and in this case it's absolutely that, then why wouldn't the enemy want to come and bring confusion as a device to dismantle the relationship? The same way the enemy attacks marriages, the same way the enemy attacks mother-daughter relationships, mother-son relationships, work partnerships, he's going to come into the kingdom friendships that bear fruit and are a threat. And again, you will know if it's that based on the nature of the relationship. I'm not talking somebody that you just go to brunch with and have a great time, y'all get lit, y'all talk about people, y'all gossip together, and then y'all go home and do it again next weekend. I'm talking about the friendships where y'all help bring each other through, the friendships where you hear from God on their behalf and you're able to speak to them in seasons where they're not able to encourage themselves. Those type of friendships. So we have a conversation, and one thing that I can appreciate about us is that the conversation was so raw, so real, like, and we're both very fiery. So we both went to the table, and like, me driving, I'm like, ain't no, hey, how you doing? We not talking about the weather. We not doing formalities. Like, we need to get straight to it. And literally I walk in, and before I sat down, she was like, so you just want to get straight into it? And the girls in the back of my head was like, that's why she my girl. But also me was like, yeah, I do want to get straight into it, because let's not, like, the conversation was so honest. And looking back, I'm so grateful that we had that space to be able to converse in that way, because it was so authentic. Like, I know the waitress probably thought that we were lovers or in a relationship, because it was such a passionate conversation. It would get a little high in volume and then it would come down, and we were there for hours. When I left, my head was hurting and I didn't have capacity for anything else for that day, but it was necessary, it was valuable, it was intimate, it was vulnerable, it was all of the things that it needed to be, because we both came ready to fight for our friendship, but to also fight for ourselves and saying, this is how your actions made me feel, and this is how I demand to be treated if we're going to do anything moving forward from here. We both had no expectation. We're like, if it's meant for us to get back right, we will, and if not, then we gotta accept that as well. Probably to date, one of the realest conversations I've ever been a part of. So now let's talk about how to cope in situations where there might be repair of the bond and there might not be. Because in the instances where there are reparations or the friendship sustains the conflict, I want you to remember this one thing. If two people are always agreeing in any type of relationship, partnership, whatever, if two people are always agreeing, then somebody is not being authentic to themselves. Two people are not always going to agree. Humans are messy. You're not always going to be on the same page, especially when you're in a relationship that has depth. And so if I'm showing up as my authentic self and you're showing up as your authentic self, those authentic selves aren't always going to be on the same page. They're not going to always like the same things, and that's okay. But how do we handle those moments where our differences cause the boat to rock a little more than we would both like? When it's a bond that you value, have a conversation. I believe that having a conversation does 4 things. It gives you a chance to express yourself and how you felt. It gives the other person a chance to do the same thing. It gives them a chance to realize how their actions impact other people and vice versa. And it does good for the people that they will encounter beyond you, whether you remain in their lives or not. It gives the person a chance to grow. It gives you a chance to grow beyond that moment and say, okay, I need to reflect in the way that I impact others with this behavior and maybe tweak that so that I don't keep hurting people by this action. If you do have that conversation, be vulnerable and honest in the conversation, or else it's for nothing. If you go to the table and your goal there is to people please, and your goal there is to go in with pride and not admit to any wrong and to not hear about you or be told about you, then again, it's for no reason. You need to go in with your defenses down, your heart open, ready to listen, and also be honest in what you're expressing yourself. Normalize passion in the conversation, absolutely, but but also assert a boundary that disrespect won't be tolerated. Like, at this big age, we should be able to come to the table and have a conversation where, yes, our voices may rise in passion, but we're not screaming at each other. We're not having a hope. We're not throwing hands at each other. Like, it's never giving disrespect. It's a respectful conversation or none at all. And respect doesn't mean that I'm whispering and I'm talking timid and mild. Sometimes respect is saying, respectfully, you got me messed up, but doing it in a way that can be honest and still respects the other party. If you're able to repair your friendship, I do believe that one thing that is absolutely necessary is being transparent and informing the other person on what the current version of you desires, demands, and on how you operate. That's one gift that conflict gives us. It gives us a chance to relearn this person that's growing and evolving. We met when we were 10 years old. We've changed millions of times over since then. In the same way you have to relearn your spouse after being with them for so long, the same is true for your friendships. I can't treat my 30-something-year-old friend the same way I did as the teenage version of her because she's not that person anymore. And so when you're having these conversations, it gives you the gift of being able to relearn this person and what they need and what they demand in order to feel like they're in a thriving and reciprocal relationship or friendship. Now, in cases where your friendship has come to an end and it is not able to be repaired, allow yourself to grieve. And sometimes, even if the relationship is repaired, you have to grieve the version of the friendship that is lost, the hopes and dreams that you had for the friendship that may never be because of the way that it now looks. And if it does completely end, then you have to grieve that person because they're no longer a part of your life. Allow yourself the space to do that. You're not being overly dramatic. You're valid in how you feel. You're valid in what you're experiencing. Give yourself the space to grieve, because if not, then you'll find yourself applying unhealthy residue to future relationships that have nothing to do with those relationships, but everything to do with the fact that you didn't grieve the relationship you already lost. Do not hold on to dead weight. Just as I was saying in the spiritual piece, consult with God to see whether this is a friendship that you need to stretch and grow, or whether it's reached its expiration and you're constantly holding on to it out of stubbornness or comfort, or you avoiding conflict, or you not wanting to be lonely. Be clear on whether this is a relationship that even is supposed to be in your life right now. If your friendship does come to an end, be open to new connections. Don't let what you lost hold you back in fear of allowing yourself to experience platonic intimacy and for fear of getting hurt. I don't want to experience new friendships because I don't want to deal with what I dealt with in that last friendship, or I'm good on females altogether, or people can't be trusted. No. That's what that person did to you. That doesn't mean that somebody who holds so much value isn't on the other side of what you're currently experiencing. Treat every single experience as new. Just because that happened in that last friendship doesn't mean that every person is going to treat you the same exact way. Yes, bring the things that you learned as a result of going through that hardship into the next experience, but don't go in it assuming that the worst is going to happen, because it could be one of the best relationships and bonds that you experience, but you'll close yourself off out of fear that you're going to be hurt, or out of fear that you're going to be rejected, or out of fear that you're going to be left lonely and in a state of grieving all over again. Treat every experience as new. And in forming those new connections, put yourself in the circles where you're likely to meet like-minded people based on your hobbies. If you like to read, go to the local library, to the local book club, whatever you like, whatever your interest is, get into those clubs and into those rooms where you're likely to meet people who you'll find things in common with, and go from there and be open to the new experience. This also holds true whether the friendship is repairable or not, but check in with yourself and be accountable to the role that you played in whatever the conflict was. How could you have handled things differently? How could you have handled things better? What did you do well that you're proud of in that situation that old you probably wouldn't have done so well, but you showed up and you grew and you honored yourself? Sometimes you also have to give yourself grace in moving on without ever explaining yourself. A lot of times our side of the story will never be heard. A lot of times we will always be the villain in someone else's story. A lot of times you won't receive justice in having your story heard. You might be in a friend group and be the one that gets outcasted because of your relationship or the way things end with one person. The rest of the people think you're the worst person in the world because of what that one person is saying about you. Let them say it and let whoever think whatever. The people who are meant to be in your life will know your heart. They'll take the time to have the conversations needed, and if they don't, they were never meant to be in your circle and be that close to your heart in the first place, and it's just God's way of removing them conveniently. Sometimes people are just committed to misunderstanding you, and that's okay. You will run yourself ragged trying to bring understanding to somebody that in their mind at the beginning of the conversation they were committed to misunderstanding you, and at the end of you wasting all your breath are still committed to misunderstanding you. And another thing that I really want you to remember is that although friendships and relationships end, there does not have to be any bad blood. You can still wish them well and move on. I wish nothing but the best, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I wish nothing but the best for the people that I no longer have ties with. But that does not mean that they deserve a seat at my table or a place in my life at this present time, and that's okay. Everyone just isn't meant to be a part of your walk, and that's a hard but very necessary truth. I hope that the things that were shared during this talk were helpful to you. Y'all know that I always want to end with a word of prayer. And I especially want to pray for those who are going through friendship breakups, because friendship breakups are hard. They can send you into a whole depression behind a friend, because you go through these seasons where you share so much and you do so much together and they become a staple in your life. And then when that's snatched from you, that's a hard thing. And a lot of people don't give enough credit to the difficulty of going through friendship breakups. So let's pray, and then we're going to close this video on out. God, I thank you for every single person who is watching this video on the other side of the screen. Thank you for their life. Thank you for their viewership. Thank you for bringing them to this video. Thank you for this time that we have spent together. Thank you for everything that was shared. Thank you for everything that was heard. Allow it to seep into their spirits in the places where they need it the most. God, I ask if the person that is on the other side of this screen is experiencing a relational transition or experiencing the end of a friendship or a relationship, that you would wrap them in the type of peace that only you can provide. I ask that you will hold them up. I ask that you will reveal to them the meaning of all of this. I ask that you will remind them that they are enough just as they are. I ask that you will remind them that they are not too much, not too little, but just right for the people who you have assigned for them. Remind them that the best is yet to come, and that there are so many individuals that they will lock arms with along their life's walk that they've yet to even encounter yet. That they're not asking for too much, that there's somebody along the way who is going to provide the treatment, the bond, the reciprocity that they deserve, that they not only wish for, but that they deserve. Reveal to them their own heart, and if it's in your will, also reveal the heart of those who have wronged them or who they may have wronged. Help them to transform for the better as a result of what they're currently experiencing. Do not allow their heart to harden as a result of what they're going through. Keep them open to all of the beautiful people that they've yet to experience yet in this lifetime that you have on the way to them. I thank you for covering their minds and their hearts during this time, and I thank you for constantly keeping your hand over them. And it is in your name we do pray. Amen. Once again, I do thank you for taking the time to tune into this video. My best friend and I have actually talked about coming and sitting down and having a part 2 to this conversation where we can both share our POV in the situation and really get down to the nitty-gritty, because we're both here to speak for ourselves and to get our point of view across. So if that's something that you would be interested in seeing, go ahead and leave that in the comments below. Let's chat in the comments below. Y'all know I love getting your feedback, and most importantly, share this video with someone that you know could use it. Somebody that you know is struggling right now because them and their main guy, their main girl, they in the trenches right now, or the friendship ended altogether. Send this to them so that they can hopefully find some peace and relief in the words that were shared. If you have not yet subscribed yet, I don't know what you're doing. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, as well as the notification bell, so that you don't miss out on any new uploads. And it won't be long before I see you very, very soon. Until then, take care of yourself, and I will see you then. Later.